Good morning to the Z School. We have a special program today to commemorate Veterans Day. We welcome our guests. We are honored to have you here with us. We also have our color guard for the town of Northborough who will be starting our program today. As we participate in our program, please let's show our best audience behaviors and our best levels of respect for our guests. At this time, I would like to welcome our color guard in. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join us in singing the Star-Spangled Banner. Please be seated. This morning, we are going to hear about Veterans Day and why we celebrate this holiday. We will have an opportunity to honor our guests who have joined us today, and we'll be hearing some wonderful music. So let's start our celebration with some patriotic songs. Please sing along as you'd like.
Keep your
this time, I'd like to ask Kara Lynn to come to the keyboard. She is going to share My Country 'Tis of Thee. Thank you, Kara. So this holiday is built around people who have served in the military. We have some great guests with us this morning, and it's always important to know who your guests are. So I'd like each of our guests, when I call your name, to please stand and allow us the opportunity to welcome you and honor you. First is Kevin Conway. A greeting from the color guard there. Mr. Conway is the father of Kaz, Satoshi, and Nico Conway. He's was in the Marine Corps for 21 years and is now retired. He was in chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear defense chief and served in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Welcome, Mr. Conway. Our next guest is Bill Hayes. Bill is the grandfather of Jordan, Jesse, and Jenny Lambert. He served in the U.S. Marines from 1966 through 1969. He served in the Vietnam War and is the recipient of 2 Purple Hearts. Welcome, Mr. Hayes. Next is Brian Murphy. Mr. Murphy is the father of Gavin and Mia Murphy. He served in U.S. Navy and Naval Reserves from 1985 through 2007. He served in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Noble Eagle, Enduring Freedom, and Iraqi Freedom. Welcome, Mr. Murphy. Next is Don Van Stone. Mr. Van Stone is the grandfather of Aiden and Emily Ruiz. He served in the U.S. Army from 1965 through 1968 and served in the Vietnam War. Thank you, Mr. Van Stone. Mr. Brian Richard. Mr. Richard is the father of Brian Richard, Gabby and Cristiano Amorim. He served in the U.S. Army and has served in the U.S. Army and National Guard since 2007. He served in the United States, in Iraq, and Kuwait. And an interesting fact is that the first time that he met Brian was when Brian was 6 months old because he had been deployed. So welcome, Mr. Richard. Next is Scott Fraser. Scott is the grandfather of Tylea and Gavin Moran. He served in the United States Navy from 1968 through 1973. He was an intelligence officer on the USS John F. Kennedy and Defense Intelligence Agency in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Mr. Fraser. Vincent Riccardi is the father of Nicholas and Brianna. Mr. Riccardi is serving in the U.S. Coast Guard. He is currently on active duty and has been stationed in the United States and Caribbean working to stop the drug traffic. Thank you, Mr. Riccardi. Daniel Stein. Is the grandfather of Jack, Nora, and Lillian Stein. He served in the United States Army from 1969 through 1971 and was stationed in Germany. Welcome, Mr. Stein. And unfortunately, sometimes work gets in the way. So representing Brian Zeiger is Mrs. Erica Zeiger. Brian is the father of Andrew and Shane Zeiger. He served in the United States Air Force from 1989 through 2010. He served in the United States, Korea, Greece, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. Thank you, Mrs. Zeiger. At this time, we have a special song, American Tears.
Sometimes I think about America, about its struggle through the years. I think of people who did what they had to do with the strength to act through their fears. Sometimes I think about America, future and her past, about we're blessed to be living in liberty, the land where freedom will last. For the heroes, for the patriots, for the soldiers and all pioneers, I will always be an American. And I'll always cry American tears. Sometimes I think about America, about her people's legacy. I wonder if they knew that what they had to do would be known throughout history. Sometimes I think about America, about her pain along the way. I know it had to do with our democracy for the world we live in today.
At this time, if we could please have our presenters come forward for our slideshow.
People in the United States celebrate Veterans Day on November 11th. Veterans Day honors veterans. Veterans are people who served in the United States military.
Veterans Day honors the men and women who have served in America's armed forces. The armed or military services are America's Air Force, Army, Navy, Coast Guard, and Marines.
Veterans Day is a patriotic holiday. The day gives all Americans a chance to say thanks to veterans for helping to keep America strong and free.
President Dwight Eisenhower named November 11th as Veterans Day in 1954. What we now call Veterans Day used to be known as Armistice Day. Armistice Day celebrated the day the fighting in World War I ended, November 11, 1918. The first Armistice Day holiday was held on November 11, 1919. It was celebrated in the United States every year until 1954, when President Eisenhower changed it to the national holiday called Veterans Day.
Some veterans visit schools. They tell students about their work in the military. People watch parades on Veterans Day. Some veterans give speeches. Many people fly American flags on Veterans Day. Many people visit monuments, statues, and graves on Veterans Day. Some people take a moment of silence to honor those who have died. On Veterans Day, people thank veterans for being brave.
Thank you so much. Thank you. As I mentioned to you earlier, sometimes our servicemen and women are far from home and they don't get to see their families for a while. Right, Mr. Richard? So Mr. Richard was serving in the Army and was not home when Brian was born. So the other people who are part of our Veterans Day celebration are the families of our veterans. So I'm going to ask Mrs. Zeiger to come up and share a poem with us about what it's like to be either a husband or a wife of a serviceman or woman, or a family member of a serviceman and woman.
Silent Ranks, a tribute to the military spouse. I wear no uniforms, no blues or army greens, but I am in the military in the ranks rarely seen. I have no rank upon my shoulders, salutes I do not give, but the military world is the place where I live. I'm not in the chain of command, orders I do not get, but my spouse is the one who does, this I cannot forget. I'm not the one who fires the weapon, who puts my life on the line, but my job is just as tough. I'm the one that's left behind. My spouse is a patriot, brave and prideful, and the call to serve their country not all can understand. Behind the lines, I see the things needed to keep this country free. My spouse makes the sacrifice, but so do our kids and me. I love the spouse I married. Patriotism is our life. I stand among the silent ranks, known as the military husband or wife.
Thank you. We have one more closing song. Our song is Heart of America.
What we want to
Thank you for such wonderful music. Much appreciated. Before we dismiss today, I would like to kindly introduce you to our color guard. Some of you have seen our color guard members around town at different parades and events, and we're always honored when they join us for our Veterans Celebration or when they join us in celebrations across our community. And some of you may actually know some of these people just because they're neighbors and so forth. The leader of our color guard is Mr. Bruce Goldsmith. And Mr. Goldsmith served in the United States Army. Some of you may actually know his daughter, who drives bus 17. I think she wanted us to all be on the lookout for you today. She was very proud that you were coming to join us. Our first rifle carrier is John Brewer. Mr. Brewer served in the United States Marines. I do want to let you know that the rifles that our gentlemen are carrying are simply display items so that we are all safe in our school. Just want to acknowledge that with you. Carrying the American flag is Mr. Larry Beatty. Mr. Beatty served in the United States Army and for a very long time was a poll helper on our election events at the Z School. So we would see him a good couple of times each year. And then carrying the American Legion post flag is Ed Bombard. And Mr. Bombard served in the United States Navy. So as we opened our program with our color guard processing in, we are going to dismiss our program with the color guard dismissing. We thank you all for joining us today. We hope you'll join us next year as well.